Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play Action Podcast presented by Warriors Student Media. I'm Brandon Smith, joined by my co-host TJ Haas as usual.
What's up, guys?
And with a special guest, Dylan Machasik.
Hello.
So we're going to start. This is a strictly college football episode. First strict college football episode. We're going to preview the championship games for this weekend, and we're going to look over some of the coaching carousel, including 4 hires and 1 job opening. But we're going to start with the Pac-12 championship game, Oregon versus Utah. I'll let TJ go first.
No, this is going to be a good one. No playoff implications here, but both teams are solid. We saw Utah beat Oregon already. I think this will honestly be more of a defense-focused game. Guys like Devin Lloyd and Kayvon Thibodeau on both defenses are trying to prove and elevate their draft stock, and I feel like that's what this game is mostly about.
Yeah. Who are you taking to win this one?
Oh, Utah. Easy.
Yeah. Who are you taking, Dylan?
Utah kind of blew the doors off Oregon at home. Played pretty good. I like Utah a lot, actually. I think them being favored by 2.5 points is kind of lenient. I know Oregon's a good team. They beat Ohio State at Ohio State without Kayvon Thibodeau, but I think Utah takes it, and I don't think it's really that close. I think they win by 2 scores, to be honest, probably 10 or more.
Yeah, I think Utah wins simply because I think Oregon has struggled, especially recently, and they're not the same. They don't have the same firepower that they did at the beginning of the year. If they're going to win, Thibodeau's going to have a really good game on defense.
Thibodeau has a good game.
Basically
every game.
Well, he needs to completely wreck the game.
I completely agree.
But he's a game wrecker. So.
Yeah.
This Utah team, I feel like, is more well-rounded. And it's just, obviously they beat Oregon once, and I don't see how they would honestly lose to them by more than at least like a score at worst.
Yeah. So I think Utah's kind of been underrated most of this season.
For sure.
But I think Oregon is kind of overrated because people look at, especially when talking about Ohio State and their loss to them, kind of look at it as a good loss. Or not a good loss, but a loss that doesn't hurt that bad. Oregon's been so all over the place. They lost to Stanford, and even after that game, I was kind of okay, they shouldn't really be ranked as high as they are when they got up to number 3 or number 4 in the rankings.
Oh yeah, that was a little, what's the word I'm trying to think of? A little
sketchy.
Yeah, it never made sense. People were all saying they could have been number 2 above Bama, above OU or OSU. Sorry, and the fact that they had teams like Oregon and Oklahoma even up there at one point is crazy to think about. But
they're kind of just hanging on to 1 win. The committee was kind of just giving them that 1 win over Ohio State and saying it was good enough for them to be number 3 in the nation, which, in my opinion, was complete BS. But, the committee does what they do. I'm not going to critique them very much because they're not the greatest at their job, but we all know that.
Everyone knows the committee isn't good, considering Bama is still 3rd.
Yeah,
but
we'll get into that in a little bit. But we're going to move on now to Baylor and Oklahoma State for the Big 12 championship game, and this game is very important for college football playoff hopes, for especially Oklahoma State. Baylor, kind of an outside shot at getting in. I really like Baylor. I like their offense, and I think their defense is they're pretty good, but sometimes they have a sketchy game. But I'm going to take Oklahoma State in this one.
I got to take Oklahoma State too. They are 5th. They are banking on a blowout loss for Bama in order to get in, and I think it will happen.
Yeah, or another team losing that we can get into in a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Oklahoma State, I think they'll win. I'm not saying I want them to win because, I really like Dave Aranda, former LSU guy, so I really like Dave Aranda, and I really like Baylor. I think they're a good team. But, I think Oklahoma State's just better. Their quarterback is really good at running, and, running quarterbacks can always win a Big 12 football game because there's not much defense played. And Oklahoma State actually has a very good defense, which is surprising for a Big 12 championship game that there's 2 pretty good defenses.
They have a top 35 defense in the country.
It's a good defense. And, I think Oklahoma State wins, and I want them to win because I want them to make the playoff. And, I mean, I guess we'll get into it later about them having one loss and making the playoff over a two-loss non-conference championship Bama. But, yeah, I think Oklahoma State wins, and I think that secures them a spot in the playoff.
It should. It at least
I
should.
think it will.
I think it will because I think Bama either gets blown out or Cincinnati loses.
Oh, we can get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a bit.
But, I mean, Oklahoma State, like we were talking about, this is an unlikely, scenario where they actually have a top, like you said, top 3 to 5 defense for a Big 12 team is crazy. And I remember the three of us talking about the other day how we all were like praying that Baylor could make the playoffs and just wreak total chaos throughout all of college football.
Total chaos.
But I honestly think Oklahoma State making the playoffs over Bama, which again, if everything goes according to plan, should happen. I still think that brings a little bit of chaos seeing a team.
Baylor can still win this game, of course.
Oh, I completely agree. It was a closer game before, but
Mm-hmm.
Baylor hasn't been great at scoring a ton of points every game. And Oklahoma State's really good defense is, I expect to hold them.
Yeah.
And again, they're fighting for a playoff spot, so they're going to play the best football game they've ever played. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for.
I wouldn't be surprised, if Oklahoma State beats them by 25 or 30 points, if the committee goes, okay, you know what, they blew out the 9th-ranked team in the country. We're going to put them in over Cincinnati, even if Cincinnati wins.
Yeah, I kind of do find
The committee wants Cincinnati's downfall.
Yeah, I kind of find two things funny though about the Big 12 championship game. I think it's really funny that both teams play really good defense, and it's kind of not what the Big 12's known for. Kind of known for shootouts and 56-49 big air raid games.
Yeah.
And also that the fact that the two future SEC teams, Oklahoma and Texas, aren't anywhere near the Big 12 championship. I find that very funny.
I'm so surprised Texas didn't make it.
Because they're going to be moving into an even better conference now. So
I can honestly because I can understand. I don't understand Texas wanting to move. I could see Oklahoma because they were on the way up.
Well,
At the time, I understood Oklahoma.
It's because Texas is the big market and they're going to make more money in the SEC. That's why they're moving.
That's true.
That makes sense. Competition-wise, doesn't make sense.
They're going to give the SEC.
But I feel like Texas.
Yeah, that's true.
Texas does still get some pretty good recruits.
Texas gets good recruits because it's Texas. It's not like
They're going to
They're the Cowboys of the NFL.
Exactly. This is our year every year.
Yeah.
They suck. So,
That's down. So we're gonna go now to the SEC championship game. Georgia versus Bama.
Georgia's gonna win.
Georgia's gonna win.
That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Georgia's probably gonna win the Natty.
Okay, my thing is, I think Georgia will win, but just because it's Alabama and it's Nick Saban, and I think in the last 28 SEC championships, only 4 underdogs have ever won. And 2 of those are Saban's Bama teams. I could definitely see Alabama winning. I know Georgia's favored by 6.5 points, and I expect them to cover that. So if you're a betting man, you should cover. You should pick that. But I think Georgia does win. I think they should win by a lot because their defense is full of 5 stars and basically the most talented defense ever put on a college football field. So they should probably win by, I think they should win by 2 scores, to be honest, just because Bama can barely score on Auburn. I don't think they should score at all on Georgia, to be honest.
If they play the same game they played last week, it took them over halfway into the third quarter to even put up a field goal against Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
And Auburn's defense is good, but
not
nowhere near. No college defense right now is anywhere near.
Probably ever.
This is a historical.
I think that Georgia defense is better than any of the defenses that Miami put out in their heyday. I think it's better than all those Nebraska defenses you hear from the 80s and 70s and all those old-time defenses that all your dads and moms talk about with, they used to be the toughest defense around. I think Georgia would mollywop every single one of them.
Georgia's incredible.
I mean, this Georgia defense is really something else.
And I think a big part of Georgia and then being able to make a late season run is actually their offense. They're getting their best receiver back, one of the best receivers in the country. George Pickens.
They just gotta hope
Yeah.
they just gotta hope he comes off to an early start,
Yeah.
and starts playing well, which I wouldn't expect right away. But I mean, I'm not saying
He's
he's
got 2 games to get it going.
And Stetson Bennett is a dog. I don't care what anybody says. Stetson Bennett is a dog. I love Stetson Bennett. I think he gets the job done. I think he's actually a pretty good college football quarterback, especially considering that he has a really good defense. He doesn't need to throw the ball down the field 30 yards every single play, or be Bryce Young, or be all these other guys, because he's got this good defense
And a good running game.
So I mean,
That is true.
Stetson Bennett is a dog. They're gonna get it done.
I didn't think he was going to play this year.
No,
When he was the national quarterback.
I mean, it was up until the JT Barrett injury.
JT Daniels.
Or, sorry, Daniels.
JT Barrett.
But it was up until his injury where Stetson Bennett actually got an opportunity.
And he's played really well.
And he's taking it for good.
Yeah. I mean, JT Daniels, I mean, especially, like, you and I, we were looking at it as, like, because we really liked the draft. We thought he was going to be real, like, up there for draft conversations. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and the top group of quarterbacks.
I mean, and he was on pace to still be that. Again, that injury just took him down.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that happen with quarterbacks.
He's not still hurt, is he?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he just sits on the sidelines now.
Bennett's just good.
Yeah, Bennett.
And yeah,
Bennett's
just
just
playing
You gotta
well.
ride the
He's
you
just
gotta
a
ride the wave.
But I think, but in terms of this game, Georgia versus Bama in the college football playoff, it's tough to see what's going to happen if Georgia blows them out. I think because we all think that Bama
Okay.
should be out.
I think as long as Oklahoma State wins, there's no shot for Bama to get in if they lose. And I still think even if they do lose and Oklahoma State loses, I still don't think Bama stays in. Because you cannot put a 2-loss non-conference champion into a 14 playoff when you have Cincy if they win, Michigan if they win, Georgia when they win, and also you have Notre Dame sitting right outside there, and then even you have Baylor with 2 losses in a conference championship. Their resume is still at that point better than Alabama's because Bama does not have a conference championship.
And obviously, that's assuming Baylor would upset Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's kind of, I think that's the only route where Bama, if they lose, is able to get back into the top 4 is if Oklahoma State were to lose. Because now the committee's not going to take Notre Dame serious because of reasons we'll discuss later.
yeah.
So we're going to go to the AAC championship game, but as we talk about this game, we'll kind of somewhat wrap up talking about the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Houston versus Cincinnati. I have Houston winning this game. I think Cincinnati's a fraud waiting to happen. I think Houston, other than Notre Dame, this is Cincinnati's toughest game they've played all year. And I think in a big game, we'll see if Desmond Ridder can play up to it. Houston's number 1 receiver is going to be taken away because Ahmad Gardner, top 10 pick.
Oh, yeah. It's a potential top 10 draft pick. I arguably say that probably the 3rd best quarter in this draft. And I know that doesn't sound as good, but I mean, this quarterback group is.
I have him second, personally. But he's so good. He hasn't allowed a touchdown in his whole career.
That is an impressive stat, to say the least. This whole defense for Cincinnati is what's carrying them. I mean, and then Desmond Ridder basically makes that offense work.
Yeah, he's a first or second round pick.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I think Cincinnati wins. I think, to be honest, both these teams are basically almost equal. It's just that the fact that Cincinnati started off very high in the preseason polls and they also beat Notre Dame, that they're ranked a lot higher than Houston. But ever since Houston lost to Texas Tech in their kickoff game, they've been basically lights out, beating teams by 30 plus in their own conference. I think they're both they're basically equal statistically. I mean, Ridder and, I don't know, his last name's Toon for Houston. They basically have the same amount of touchdowns, 27 to 26.
Yeah,
Same amount of interceptions. Both running backs, 16, 17 touchdowns. So, I mean, they're pretty similar. Neither of them have a conference loss.
And
I think
it's just that loss.
It's a pretty similar game. I mean, they're both very similar. And I think the only difference that Cincinnati has over them right now is the fact they've beaten Notre Dame at Notre Dame. So I guess I think Cincinnati will win. The line is 10.5 points, which I don't see Cincinnati
They
covering.
will not cover that.
I think probably they'll win by one score. I don't know whether it'll be 3, 7, 4, whatever, but I think they will win by one score and they will not cover, so don't bet that line.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I really see Cincinnati balling out in this game. I think this is because everyone's been down on them.
Yeah.
You know, obviously everyone knows they're a good team. They're undefeated right now, and you have to praise that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're
You play your opponents.
Exactly. You play your opponents, and they play them all very well. I mean, again, like I said, we beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame. That's hard to do, and that was a good game by both teams. So I think this is going to be I'm not going to say a blowout by any means, but I do think it's going to be by 2 scores or more.
Really?
Because I think this is Cincinnati. They have to realize that this is Cincinnati's chance to really stand out from the rest. Because like you said, they are statistically 2 very close teams.
Yeah. I think Houston will be getting a lot more respect if they didn't lose that game to Texas Tech.
Oh, for sure. Because then again, they would be
Houston
the 3rd undefeated team.
They'd probably be a top 15 team, probably top 10.
I mean, I could see that. I won't even lie. I never realized how good Houston was until looking into it a week or 2 ago.
Yeah.
And they've really, I mean, I realized how much better they are than their ranking. I do think they are a potential top 15 team right now, honestly. But I do see Cincinnati taking this opportunity to, again, not blow out, but pretty
They could take
handily
yeah.
beat a big team right now
Mm.
to secure a playoff spot.
So for me, I have Houston pulling off the upset just because it's very possible.
Yeah.
So I think that would leave the committee with a lot of questions. I also had Oklahoma State winning and Georgia winning. So I think you'd obviously put Georgia 1.
Michigan would stay 2.
Michigan will probably stay 2 because I think they beat Iowa. And then you have you'll probably put Oklahoma State at 3. Figure they win.
And then Cincinnati 4.
But what if Cincinnati loses?
If Cincinnati loses, then
You think they'll keep them in?
If Cincinnati loses,
I think
and
they'll probably
Alabama
put Bama
loses,
in.
they'll probably put Bama in, but they should put
They put-
Notre Dame in.
Yeah,
I don't
there
even
you
care
go.
that they're coachless, and even though they're going to get an interim head coach, and the interim head coach is still going to be pretty good, you still should put them in.
Well,
Because-
he's not even interim. He's the head coach.
Yeah, so you should still put them in.
I think they should put Notre Dame in if Cincinnati loses.
My issue is that I don't think Notre Dame is as good as
Oh,
their
no.
ranking is either. So I don't think they deserve a playoff
But who
spot.
cares? Put them in so they can get beat by like 40 by Georgia. So that
That's a
people
good
can
point.
realize that Notre Dame is overrated.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point. I'm willing to accept that.
So,
My one goal for this playoff, though, is to see Oklahoma State make it. That's all
alright,
I care about.
do you want to win the Big Ten championship game?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Michigan, Iowa.
Okay, pretty simple. Michigan's going to run all over Iowa, and they're going to beat them by 2 scores plus. I mean, Iowa has no offense. Their quarterback legit does not have double-digit touchdown passes, which is very sorry. I know there are plenty of Iowa fans here at McHenry High School. Your running back doesn't even have 10 touchdowns either. You cannot score offensive touchdowns. You mainly score defensive touchdowns off interceptions. Well, sadly, Michigan doesn't throw the ball very often, so you can't get many interceptions. Cade McNamara isn't a bad quarterback by any means. It's just he doesn't throw the ball a lot. So they kind of just turn around and give it to Hassan Haskins. He's got 18 touchdowns on the year. So
Dude's a beast.
I think he runs all over Iowa. I think the game will be won in the trenches, where Michigan dominated Ohio State last week in the trenches. Basically made them look like a bunch of little toddlers. And I think they do the same to Iowa. I know Iowa normally is pretty physical, because that's kind of what they preach. They're just big physical team. Now Wisconsin, most of the Big Ten teams are pretty big and physical. But I still think Michigan overpowers them and runs all over them. And I think the spread of 11 is a pretty decent spread, because Michigan's probably going to win by 2 scores plus.
Now, as much as I like Iowa, you know, Iowa's not my number 1 team, but like I really like Iowa, and their offense is horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously said it best. I mean, quarterback sucks. I think Tyler Goodson's good, though. I mean, obviously double-digit touchdowns isn't good, but I think he's overall a good running back. But again, when you're going up against a defensive line that has Aiden Hutchinson on one side and David Ojabo on the other, I get that they're edge rushers, but you're screwed. You're basically screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a game in the trenches, and Iowa is I would say a top 10 statistical defense right now.
Yeah.
But it is heavily focused on their secondary and their linebacking core, not so much the D-line, and that's obviously where Hassan Haskins is going to be running through. So
Michigan's 2 pass rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, who's probably going to be my edge one. I don't know
he
yet.
is mine.
But with that, with him and David Ojabo, those 2 guys alone will give Michigan a chance in almost any game.
Yeah,
Because they are simply unblockable as a duo.
I completely agree. I mean, this is. I think out of all the games you've gone over so far, I do think that this Michigan-Iowa game is the easiest to decide.
Probably.
I mean, okay, obviously other than the SEC championship, but that's obvious.
Yeah,
That's
because Georgia's just
Georgia's
so
just
good.
8 steps above literally every other team.
Yeah.
So other than that game, obviously, I think Michigan-Iowa is pretty easy to decide. I mean, Michigan's going to win, and they're going to secure their number 2 spot in the playoffs.
Do we want to cover the ACC?
Yeah, we will.
Okay. To cover the ACC championship just a little bit, because
Quarterbacks
it
were
doesn't
pretty
really
good.
matter. The quarterbacks are very good. They're going to score a lot. It's probably going to. I wouldn't be surprised if both teams combine for over 100 points. Wouldn't be surprised if they combine for over 120 points.
What's
to be
the over
honest.
under on that?
The over/under sits at a solid. Can ESPN load any slower? 71. So take the over because they're gonna
Yeah,
score
hammer
over.
the over.
They got Pitt by 3 on the spread. I think it's going to be close. It's probably just going to be a really close, high-scoring game where there's not much defense played. I'm just pretty happy. I'm pretty happy that Clemson's not in it. Thank God.
Yeah, no way.
I don't think many people like Clemson, and that's a good thing because you shouldn't like Clemson. But I don't even think we really need to summarize the ACC championship game other than it's going to be a lot of points scored.
Yeah,
this
okay.
game,
And I think I like Sam Hartman because he was in QB1, so I'm going to pick Wake Forest.
this game is solely, in my eyes, obviously this game has 0 playoff implications whatsoever. These are, the 15, 16 seeds? I
Something
believe?
like that.
Right around there. They are, one away from one another.
New
but
Year's Six Bowl implications.
This game is only for Kenny Pickett to raise his draft stock. That is the only thing I see coming out of this game.
Well, and Sam Hartman, too.
But even then, I
In
know.
his future.
Yeah, I was gonna say Hartman's gonna.
He's only a sophomore, so it's future.
He's definitely going back, and he's gonna give it another year. And he's obviously played really well this year, and I think he will continue to play well next year. And I think Wake Forest might have a chance at the ACC championship again next year.
Yeah.
They should.
On the way Clemson's trending, on the way UNC is trending. I mean, Pittsburgh, I think I don't know how well Pittsburgh will be with Pickett gone, because I think Pickett is one of the best quarterbacks in the college football. I think everyone agrees with that.
Yep.
So
He's going to be probably a first or second round pick. You know.
I'm going to say, honestly, if he
Probably
plays really
first.
well in this game, I'm going to say first. And I think that's what this game is for. He's a borderline first round pick right now. He's got to have another great game here, and I think that pushes him into the first round, because teams always reach for quarterbacks. That's even in a quarterback class that doesn't have a secure number 1, all teams reach on quarterbacks. I think Matt Corral will go in the top 10. Malik Willis will go top 15. Stuff like that. I mean, obviously they're not worth it there, but
that's just what GMs
that's
do.
just what, because you need a secure quarterback for the future.
Yeah.
And I think Pickett having a great game here will secure him a first round. Or not secure, but really make a good argument for being a first round pick.
Yeah, just overall, with this year's conference championship games, Oregon, Utah, people probably expected that. Baylor, Oklahoma State, everyone probably expected OU at the start of the year. Georgia, Bama,
Makes sense.
Houston, Cincinnati.
No one cared about the AAC, though.
No.
To be fair.
But it's a super important game.
Yes. But
Michigan, Iowa, we all probably thought Ohio State would get into that. And then Pitt versus Wake Forest.
no one expected that.
No one expected that. People probably expected Clemson and UNC.
Yep.
So, just this year, a lot of parity in college football in general, and that makes
Which is
it
good
really
to see.
fun.
I was going to say, that makes this a good
Because
year.
that was the one thing that was kind of holding college football back, just not enough parity.
I agree. And with many of these conference games,
It sucks that Georgia's so dominant though over these other teams.
I agree.
So, but we're gonna move on now to the coach of carousel. 4 hires within the last week, and there's some big hires.
I think we start with the most important one, or at least the one that's kind of affected college football the most, and that's Lincoln Riley to USC. I mean, this has brought. I mean, so many players from Oklahoma are transferring
They're decommitting.
and decommitting. Like these, I mean, Malachi Nelson, which is a 5-star quarterback for what? He's in the 2022 or
2023.
2023.
He's in the Irishman class.
Yeah, so he was fully committed to Oklahoma, decommitted. Like 2 days later, he committed to USC. 5-star running back dad, Willie Brown, I believe is his name, just decommitted. Multiple receivers have decommitted.
Marvin Mims might decommit.
Marvin Mims might transfer.
Oh yeah, transfer. My bad.
Transfer portal as well.
Jadon Hazelwood already hit the transfer portal. Super good receiver.
Thank God they only allow 7 transfers a year to certain schools, because I'm sure Oklahoma's whole roster would transfer to USC at this point.
That's what it looks like.
I mean, it helps college football a lot. Makes the Pac-12 a lot better than just Utah and Oregon
A
all
lot
the
more
time.
relevant.
And also, I mean, it's USC. It's in LA. It's a big market. I mean, they're going to get good recruits out. It's going to make college football. I mean, it's going to make college football a lot more exciting to watch.
Yes.
Basically, Lincoln Riley going to USC guarantees USC making the playoff for like 5 years in a row, just to get, just like Oklahoma, knocked out in the semis.
Yeah.
So, and all I gotta say is really that Lincoln Riley's scared of playing in the SEC, but good for him. He is helping college
I was
football.
gonna say, I think as much as I
And LSU never offered him because there was no way for them to turn around 2 days later and hire Brian Kelly if they offered Lincoln Riley.
There's the
That
LSU
is,
fan.
but there's no possible way, just logic. If we want to get into the Brian Kelly hire, I can.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, we'll get into that. You take it away.
Okay, as an LSU fan, there's no possible way that they offered Lincoln Riley and didn't get him, and then 2 days later they just turned around and said, "Hey, Brian Kelly, yeah, do you want to coach for us?" And he's just like, "Oh yeah, sure." There's no possible way. I watched the introductory press conference. I watched everything with Brian Kelly. I know he's kind of a jerk in the past, but he's a good football
Lincoln
coach.
Riley lied his butt off though. He literally said the offers started on Sunday morning. No, it did not.
Brian Kelly is a good football coach. That's all that matters. I mean, he's legit got the second best resume behind Saban when it comes to winning.
And he's not a
Of
big
course-
sexy name.
Of course, yeah. Of course, he doesn't have any national championships. It's hard to win a national championship at Notre Dame nowadays. I mean, like, they don't get all the big recruits like they used to, and it's kind of just SEC ball, not Notre Dame ball anymore.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, even when he had his best teams at Notre Dame, they'd still go to the national championship game versus Bama and lose by 40. So that kind of shows you that he topped out at Notre Dame. He realized he topped out at Notre Dame, but I think he noticed that at LSU with the facilities they have, like he said, the facilities, the talent that Louisiana produces, the talent that just the South in general produces, he had a way better opportunity of winning a national title. I think he probably does win a national title at some point at LSU. I mean, he's going to be here for 10 years most likely.
Unless he gets fired.
I don't think he will get
No.
fired. I think he'll at least be 9-3 every year, which means he probably won't get fired. And he said he wanted to compete in the SEC, and that was kind of his next challenge in his life, and that's why he chose LSU. So, I mean, I'm pretty excited as an LSU fan for the hire. I think he turns the program around. So, yeah, I mean,
I think
He's a jerk, but it was a good move by him. He did it in a jerk way though, by kind of.
yeah, it was a little messed up that he kind of got ghosted the entire team until social media found out. But
Yeah.
I mean, for LSU, my only concern, and this is like a really early on concern, is that he is now tackling the SEC. It's not like because there was rumors about bringing Lane Kiffin. He's already been in the SEC. You know, they could brought him. He'd have experience. So I mean, I think it's going to take like a year or two to get fully into like a playoff contending team.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, but
I think with Kelly is, I think he's won everywhere else. So it's kind of like, I feel like he can come in and win immediately because, I mean, he won at Central Michigan. It took him 2 years to turn around. They won the MAC. Then he moved to Cincinnati. It took him 2 years to turn them around. Then they were almost in like a top 5 team because they were undefeated. Left for Notre Dame. which again, I guess isn't like the greatest thing to do in the world, but I mean, Notre Dame's a prestigious job, as it always will be. So left for them, turned them around from being 6-6 to 3 years later, appearing in the national championship game against Bama.
Yeah,
Now,
He's a damn good coach.
They got smacked, but I mean, he recruited very well at Notre Dame. He's got the number 3, I think it was number 3 in the nation, or it's a top 5 class in the nation for this year at Notre Dame, which is very hard to do because of all the restrictions they have with academics and all these other restrictions for Notre Dame that he won't have at LSU. I mean, LSU is just free market. He can go anywhere he wants, recruit anybody who he wants, and I mean, he's can recruit all over Louisiana, which if he just recruited in Louisiana, he could probably still put together a pretty damn good team. So I think they might not compete for a SEC title next year necessarily, but I think the year after will definitely be a year where they're up there with the rest of the West. Because, I mean, the West is easily the best division in college football.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I think they're about a year away from probably being either first or at least second in the West.
Yeah.
And consistently, because I think he will be able to sustain it. Because he sustained it at Notre Dame. He never really had any bad seasons at Notre Dame.
No.
So I think he will
They
be
just
able to
underachieve in general because they are Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But, here's kind of the last thing on the LSU Brian Kelly stuff. There is a quarterback in Louisiana that is not committed yet by the name of Arch Manning. So
That is a good
He's
point.
open for the
I don't think it's
2022,
happening. I
but
think
we are
it's
also
Ole Miss.
but we're also getting Walker Howard 2022.
That's true.
And
He's so good.
He's a dog. So
Yeah, Walker
Yeah,
Howard's
we
like
did the job.
I think he's 4th in the 2022 class
Yeah.
from what I saw.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's incredible. He really is. So
I think we'll be fine.
if he wasn't committed to LSU, I do think LSU would try to bring in Arch Manning.
Oh, yeah.
And
He'll go to
Kelly
Ole Miss.
also inherits a very not polished but a very talented QB room with Max Johnson and Garrett Nussmeier. They're not necessarily the most polished, honestly. Sometimes I wind up gouge my eyes out watching them, but they're very, very talented. So I mean, like, he inherits a lot at LSU, a lot of talent.
So we're gonna go. Obviously, those are the 2 big hires, but we're gonna go to some smaller ones. Not smaller, but just
Oh, that's a pretty big one. Billy
Napier to Florida.
Billy
It's a
Napier
smaller
to Florida.
name.
Scared money don't make no money. Billy Napier.
Hey, he's got more guts than Lincoln Riley.
Oh, yeah.
Any coach willing to take on this Florida job is in for a treat.
And I think he wins. I think he wins their Sun Belt Championship with Louisiana. Saturday, and I think they play in their bowl game, and he immediately goes to Florida and he turns it around. It's Florida. All you have to do is recruit in the state of Florida, and you can have a good team.
Yeah.
And that's what Dan Mullen didn't do. That's why he got booted. And I think for a few years, I think Napier will have to reap the deficiencies that his team has because of how Mullen recruited in Florida and how actually the lack of recruiting he did in Florida. But I think it will take a few years, and Napier will be able to turn that program around into another powerhouse. Because, I mean, Florida's a blue blood program. They should be able to out-recruit all the rest of the schools in Florida for kids in Florida. So I think Napier can turn them around.
Oh, easily. I mean, I don't think he'll be an immediate top contender in the SEC.
He's a damn
with Bama, with LSU.
Well, they got to deal with Georgia.
And Georgia.
And depending on how the conference realigns when Texas and Oklahoma come in, they might have to deal with Bama and Auburn in their same division next year or in a few years. So I think it might take a few years, but I think Napier is going to be a coach who probably sticks at Florida for a very long time.
Napier's the guy to do it, I think.
I think he will stick at Florida for a real long time.
So we're going to go to Marcus Freeman, got hired by Notre Dame, just real quick. He was the defensive coordinator under Brian Kelly. I think it's a good hire. The players love him, the coaches love him.
He's a great coach. I wanted him to come with Brian Kelly as long as with Tommy Rees to LSU to help be the defensive coordinator. But yeah, it's a great hire.
Yeah, and then just super fast. Who do you think is getting the OU job?
Matt Campbell.
Who do you think?
It probably will be Matt Campbell, but I would like for it to be Bob Stoops.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be Matt Campbell too, but
I think he's the favorite.
Yeah, but that's it for the latest episode of Play Action Podcast presented by Warrior Student Media. I'm Brandon Smith. He's TJ Haas. He's Dylan Machashik. Have a good day.